As I've stated before, there's often a lot of criticism of the third season of Star Trek, and that it was weaker than the first two. And there's some examples, obviously. Spock's Brain's the one that everyone goes to, but it's just one episode, which I actually like, but I see what they mean by it. But the idea that that's the gauge by which all the other episodes are measured, I don't think it's fair. And as I've gone through it, I've seen quite a few episodes that are actually deserve a lot of respect as being some of the best. So, such is the case with, sadly, the penultimate episode of the original Star Trek, All Our Yesterdays, which it's just a very powerful episode for Mr. Spock. And I believe, I seem to recall seeing an advertisement for a Star Trek novel. I obviously did not read it, but that it was written up as a sequel to this one. And I'll get back to that later. But anyway, the basic plot here is the Enterprise is sent to this doomed planet. They're doomed because there's a star or sun, what have you, is about to go nova. And so the Enterprise is there to offer any potential for rescue and whatnot. The only flaw here, and this is something I don't know, is that it's a violation of the Prime Directive. But they're about to be destroyed, so maybe they're like, all right, that's an exemption. Because they show up, and Spock, I believe, mentions they don't have any space travel technology. So they beam down to the planet to, hi, we're aliens, we're here to save you. And there's no one there. They can't find anybody, and they encounter this strange old man. So, there's somebody. And then he keeps popping up here and there. Well, they're android copies of one man. They eventually meet the one man. And he thinks they're citizens of his planet, despite Spock looking very alien. And he says, you guys are late, and they're like, what? And he mentions he's the librarian. This is the library. And, okay, and there's all these discs that show what appears to be records of past eras of the planet. And they're looking at them and all this stuff. And they don't quite understand what he's saying. They keep asking where they go, and he says they went where they wanted to go. And they're like, oh, how'd they do that, And so they're going through the discs and whatnot, and then Kirk's looking at one that shows a past era, and then suddenly he hears a woman scream from behind, and what? So he dashes into the direction of it, and there's this little archway to outside, and when he goes through it, he's zapped, and he finds himself in the distant past of this planet. And he finds this woman being harassed in I guess, a sort of colonial age era town. And he goes and rescues her and all this sort of stuff. Meanwhile, he turns around. The doorway is not there anymore. It's just a brick wall. And, he's in the past. While he was doing that, he called out to Spock and McCoy. They see him disappear through the threshold there, and they're like, holy crap, so they dash after him. But they don't arrive into the town. They arrive into this Arctic wasteland, which appears to be under blizzard conditions. And they can still hear one another. They can hear Kirk through this area they're in, their wall of mountain and ice, I guess, and his wall of brick. But they haven't quite figured out what's just happened. Kirk gets arrested for being a witch because they could hear the other people could hear the voices, and they thought these were spirits or whatnot. So he gets arrested. Spock and McCoy are freezing to death, and then a mysterious figure shows up and saves them, brings them to a cave. And that leads us to the important part of the story. The figure is the super hot, sexy Mariette Hartley. And she takes off her fur cloak, and she's all dressed up like Jane from Tarzan, and it's just awesome. And Spock notices this. Poor McCoy is unconscious at this point, is having nearly succumbed to the cold, you know. And of course, Spock being a Vulcan, he can last longer. And he even, and this is interesting too, it can give some amount of sense to how Spock has developed over the years. And that, if you recall the scene of the Galileo 7, when they were, Spock kept telling them to leave him behind, and he was making logical decisions, and they seemed cold and heartless and all that. Whereas here, McCoy says, I'm succumbing to frostbite. I can't feel my feet anymore. I'm just holding you back. Try to find Jim. Just leave me, Spock. You can last longer, you know. And he's right. You know, it's true. He could. But Spock refuses to listen to that. He keeps, he's determined to save McCoy. So, you know, it's interesting, although it does play into the overall plot here about what's happening to Spock. So, they go, they're in the cave and everything, and well, he meets this sexy girl who's very lonely and hasn't seen a man in a long time, and she's all fascinated with this alien-looking dude. And well, McCoy, you know, maybe she could have been interested in him. I don't know, but he zonked out on the bed there. So, eventually, a romance blossoms between the two. And there's a cutaway scene where, they did the deed. But Spock is like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why am I acting like this? And there's even an earlier scene when McCoy wakes up and he sees her and, you know, makes a complimentary comment or whatnot, and Spock is pissed. Yeah, he's jealous. He doesn't like that. And McCoy's like, what? But eventually McCoy figures it out, what's going on here. Because of how far in the past they are and all this stuff, he realizes that, I guess, it's left up open to figure out what it is, but that because they are 5,000 years in the past, that Spock is somehow being affected by his ancestors on Vulcan, who are now at the height of their barbarism and driven by emotion and everything, which eventually they nearly destroy themselves, and this leads to the teachings of Surak to be, to practice pure logic and all that. And that's what they did. But as you recall, there is the incident with the giant amoeba episode, that killed a Vulcan starship. And that at one point Spock has his Obi-Wan Kenobi moment, but he did it first, so where he reacts, and Kirk's like, "Oh, what happened to Spock?" And he says, "It's as if 1,000 Vulcans had cried out, or whatever." And that's that connection. We know they're telepathic to a point where they can when they touch each other and stuff, and all that. So this kind of establishes that. To you get to this point where Spock is regressing to a more emotional man, and he's attracted to this woman, and he's jealous of the other man in the room. Keep away, she's mine. And all that stuff. So, due to the circumstances, he has to violate his veganism and eat meat because it's all there is, and that sort of thing. But it's, so finally Spock, well, he did before when he was all doped up on those spores, but here his Spock gets some, Meanwhile, Kirk, one of the judges of him turns out to be somebody from the future. He's one of the ones that escaped into the past. For whatever reason, he chose this era that believes in witches and whatnot. And so Kirk manhandles him to get him out of the jail cell, and he explains to him and everything. But the guy explains, says, you can't go back. You've been conditioned to live in this era, so once you come through the doorway, you can't go back. You'll die. And Kirk, what? And then he says, but I didn't go through anything like that. And he says, holy crap, then you're dying now. You got to go back. So you can only live for a few hours in the past without the proper conditioning. And Kirk even seems to show signs of getting sick. So he gets to go back. He finds the pathway, and he goes back or forward, if you will, to the future, and then ends up having to battle the androids and everything, and the old man himself, who keeps thinking he's just a mentally deranged man who he thinks he's saving his life and all that. But Kirk gets the upper hand, and says, I got to find my friends. And they go through the disc, which, boy, I tell you, that really, what are the odds they would find the one, But they do. And meanwhile, Spock damn near kills McCoy because he believes the woman is lying about them, because she tells him, yeah, you can't go back because you've been conditioned and all that. But she kind of leaves that part out, and McCoy accuses her of wanting to keep them there because she's lonely and she's desperate, and it's understandable. But hey, I think she's lying. Ultimately, she's not really lying; she just didn't know. And when they realize that's what it is, the Tavacron, they didn't go through the conditioning to be able to exist in that past, so they were dying as they spoke, but. Of course, McCoy is recovered from the cold sickness, but nevertheless. But that's the thing. They have to go, even though she wants them to stay, or at least Spock to stay, he would only have lived for a few more hours. So it's all very sad that she was sent there in exile by some tyrant that didn't like her and her family, but wanted her to suffer. He did far worse than kill her. He's hurt her, and he wanted to go on hurting her. So, boy, he succeeded, and she's stuck there in that wasteland for the rest of her life. And at the end, Spock still tries to stay, but since they came in together, the only way to go back and save McCoy was they both had to leave together, so they do. And that's it, and the old man shoves Kirk out of the way and dashes through the threshold to whatever time period he wanted, and that's it. They saved themselves to go live in the past, and so there was no rescue mission. So Kirk's like, well, okay, we solved this, and let's get out of here. And then there's this moment between McCoy and Spock, and McCoy's like, he's looking at him, and Spock says, there's no need, I'm fine. Well, no, you're not. But he's back to his old self, but he's got to go back to containing all that. And McCoy's like, yeah, but it happened, and Spock said, yes, it did, but that was 5,000 years ago, and she's dead and buried. And that's it, and it's powerful sadness, this one moment of joy for Spock, and it's taken away by this tragic circumstance, and he has to just go it alone, and that's it. Spock is a very, very lonely character. And his only outlet is his friendship with the crew of the Enterprise, most notably McCoy and Kirk, So he can't even try something with Nurse Chapel, because she's willing, but he's the way he is, So it's a rather tortured existence and sad, but it's part of the appeal to his character, oddly enough. So anyway, the novel, was it Yesterday's Child or something like that? I can't remember. I'll have to look that up. But apparently the upshot of it was that, he fathered a child with this woman. And I don't know if it was the Guardian of Forever or something. And this guy comes to the current, to the future, something like that. I don't know. I have to look it up and see where the story goes, and which is, good enough yarn or what have you. I don't know, but it's an interesting thing because, it does lay the groundwork, and had Star Trek continued, that is something they could have revisited. But it didn't, and now there's only one episode left of the original Star Trek, and we'll come to that next time here on the Nailsin Ratings. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to IndiePlanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness. So many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.